O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Car ton bras c'est porter l'épée, il c'est porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you very much, Joel. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any addendum and delegation items, Madam Clerk?
There are no addendum items, but there is a delegation that will be heard under item 1 tonight.
At this time, I entertain a motion to confirm our agenda. Moved by Councillor Desmarais, seconded by Councillor Main. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? There being none, it shall be so recorded. Madam Clerk, thank you. There are 6 sets of minutes we call for the adoption of. It's a special meeting of Committee of the Whole, 07-18, held on March 14th, 2018. Second one, a special meeting of Committee of the Whole, 10-18, held on April 20th and 21st, 2018. And finally, the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole, 11-18, held on April 23rd, 2018. I'd entertain a motion to adopt those meeting minutes in bulk. Moved by Councillor Main, second by Councillor Kenny. All those in favor? Opposed? They're carried. There are no presentations this evening, but we have a delegation from Mr. George Henry, Vice President, and Dan Tonnell, a board member for the Community Living, regarding Community Living Awareness Month. Could you come forward, please? Mr. Henry.
Mayor Maloney, members of council, city staff, and citizens of Port Colborne. I'm George Henry, I'm the Vice President of Community Living Port Colborne Wainfleet. The month of May annually marks Community Living Awareness Month across the province of Ontario. While it's important to do it at this particular time, it's important that people in the community know about what we are doing all year round. This month in particular motivates us to reflect on the valued presence and contribution of people with developmental disabilities within the community. They make this city more progressive, inclusive, and a welcoming place for all people. This May, Community Living advocates also acknowledge the critical challenges and work ahead of them to ensure that people have equal rights and the same opportunities as their fellow citizens, and that people continue to have the supports they need in the community so that they can function just like you and I do. Community Living Port Colborne Wainfleet provides a wide variety of programs and services for people who have developmental disabilities, but it isn't just about providing good service. It is about helping people to live good lives. It's about children attending the school in their neighborhood so that they can be with the children who live near them and attend with them in the same classrooms and go to the same day camps and the special events that all the other kids in their neighborhood go to. It's about young people going to college finding challenging and meaningful work, and maybe even starting a family. It's about people living with dignity and enjoying life along the way. And it's about connecting people to the community of Port Colborne. Community Living Port Colborne Wainfleet believes that our community should be a place where all people have the opportunity to fully and actively participate in the life of the community. This past year has been a busy one for our organization. Last spring, the Board of Directors of Community Living Port Erie and Community Living Port Colborne Wainfleet determined that a strategic opportunity existed to share executive director services between the two neighboring organizations, freeing up resources to enhance services to persons served in both communities. The partnership to share executive director services began July 1st, 2017, and to date has been very successful. You will notice our executive director hasn't even turned gray yet. I'm also pleased to report that in keeping with our strategic plan of enhancing our existing services and creating new ones, we opened a new 6-unit apartment building in December over on Northland Avenue. Our dream became a reality due to the contribution and partnerships of many groups, including the City of Port Colborne, the Canadian Tire Financial Services, Young Bunslauer, Canada, Kahane Foundation, and the Hugh James Corcoran Trust Fund, Sente Building Group, and the Government of Ontario. I would also like to acknowledge and sincere appreciation for all the support we receive from local businesses, groups, and organizations for this project. In closing, I'd like to once again thank you for having us here tonight. With the support of a strong community, we can and will continue to work towards a society where individuals with intellectual challenges are present, active, valued, and respected. Dan Tonello is the leader of one of our groups, and he's going to explain one of the things that we do to help people enhance their lives in the community. Dan?
Thank you very much, George. Mayor Maloney, members of Port Colborne City Council, and citizens of Port Colborne. My name is Dan Tonello. I am a member of the Board of Directors of Community Living Port Colborne Wainfleet. I am also a representative of People Helping People Achieve, a self-advocate group. What is a self-advocate? A self-advocate is defined as a person with an intellectual disability who speaks out about issues that affect their life. Some people need support to express what is important to them. People Helping People Achieve is a support group of leaders. We are about learning and educating ourselves about our rights as Canadian citizens and how we can make our lives great. It includes being strong and standing together to advocate for ourselves. The words community living reflect the growing understanding that the right to live a fully integrated life within the community, to live, to go to school, to work, to enjoy recreation, and be active in retirement belongs to all. We belong to community living because we support the full inclusion of people with an intellectual disability in all aspects of community living. We support community living, People First Canada, and their pledge to put people first, not their disability. We invite the broader community to take notice of the significant contributions that people with developmental disabilities have made and continue to make in their community. Join us as ambassadors, walking side by side on our journey as we approach our ultimate destination towards full inclusion, rights, and dignity for all. Anthropologist Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." Thank you for providing us the opportunity to speak with you and for listening to our presentation this evening.
Thank you, Danny. You recall being here Friday morning when we raised the Community Awareness Month flag in honor of your association. At this time, perhaps there may be a few questions from members of council. Mr.
Mayor, thank you.
Mr.
Not a question, but I certainly like to thank George and Vicky and Dan and everyone else involved in that. I can't imagine our community without community living in it. And you guys have been doing this for a number of years, and I'd just like to say thank you for everything you do to help people in our community. So we're happy to have you here anytime, I'm sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bodnar. Any other questions of the delegates? There being none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being here and again this year, and look forward to receiving you next year, and hope you enjoy a good month of activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time and for allowing us to come and do our presentation to you at City Council this evening. Thank
It's
you.
our pleasure, Dan. Okay, can we go back to determination of items requiring separate discussion? On my left, and Mr. Bodnar.
There may be if somebody doesn't pull it, but I think I'll leave it to the person that brought it up last week.
Mr. Elliott. Mr. Main.
Number 1, please.
Item 1. Thank you. Any others? That's it, Mr. Main? Mrs. Demery?
I'm sorry, yes.
Mrs. Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 2, please.
Item 2. Nothing? Okay. Can we, Mr. Elliott, you have,
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else is going to pull them, so I'll do number 5 and number 7.
5 and
7.
okay. Last call. And ask for a motion to approve those items not requiring separate discussion. Moved by Councillor Demery, second by Councillor Kenny. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Next would be the mayor's report. Top of the list is Canadian Niagara Power Inc. I met with representatives of Canadian Niagara Power Inc. last week to discuss our concerns about the recent and frequent power outages in the city, which were perhaps very inconvenient. A letter explaining the recent outages has been received from Canadian Niagara Power, a copy of which has been placed in front of you, and this letter will be posted on our website. Profanity on the approach to the former train bridge. Many thanks go out to the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation for painting over the profanity in a prompt fashion, and for Director Chris Lee for pursuing this with the Seaway. And there was a prompt response to a disgusting act of what is it? Vandalism. Thank you, Madam Bemery. Doctor's Day, I participated in a short video acknowledging Doctor's Day in Port Colborne. Similarly, the Physician Recruitment Committee will be hosting first-year medical students from the University of Ottawa and Port Colborne next week, and this is to introduce them to what practicing in a smaller community is like. Okay, some great exposure in that regard. Museum news. I also attended at the museum members' reception at the museum as the museum opened for the season. May is Museum Month, and it's celebrated with the Port Colborne Historical and Marine Museum this Friday, May 18th from 12 to 5 p.m. Also on the museum, Arabella's Pie Social and History Fair is May 27th from 12 to 4 p.m. And starting June 1st, Arabella's Tea Room opens daily for this season from 2 to 4 p.m. Tea from June 1st to 9th is 2 for 1 to celebrate Arabella's 40th anniversary. On Saturday, April 28th, I attended the memorial at 88 Lakeview Park in recognition of the National Day of Mourning to honor those workers in Canada who have been killed, injured, or disabled on the job, or who suffered from occupational diseases. The Medical Education Recruitment and Health Services Committee Education Award is available to a resident of Port Colborne graduating high school this year. And as they enter the post-secondary studies related to a health medical field, you can apply for one of two $250 awards from the Medical Education Recruitment and Health Services Committee. Please contact your guidance department for more information on these awards. Upcoming events, there is a public meeting for Sunset Park this Wednesday, May 16th from 6 to 8 p.m. in council chambers regarding the changes that are being made to the park, and we're looking for citizen input on these changes. We will be holding our 24th annual Community Safety Day at the Port Colborne Fire Hall from May 26th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. The fire chief may have more to say about this. And join us for Community Planning Day at the Community Gardens, May 27th, is from 3 to 5 p.m. And the last item, I'll bring it up, and maybe more to deal with it later, but I must advise council I was very disappointed to receive a 2-page flyer in a newspaper on the weekend, authored by Regional Councillor David Barrick. The publication pointed out the positive endeavors of Mr. Barrick and I would assume the 30 other members of Regional Council during their last term. In doing so, unfortunately, he used comparisons of the region with the city of Port Colborne and without explanation of the reasons for the differences. The flyer had negative connotations regarding the efforts of our 9 councillors. It's commonly said that one does not build oneself up by tearing another down. I intend to meet with Mr. Merrick on these items, and there may be more questions later in our councillors' remarks, but we are in this endeavor to make things better for the entire council and the entire community. So again, when we have one being perhaps critical of the other hand, then I think we're going to have to get together to resolve this issue. In any event, those are my comments. Any questions of members of the council? Yes, Madam Demery, then Madam Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have one question about the flyer that you're referencing. Do you know whether that was paid for through regional funds? Did other regional councillors do that? I hear there were a couple of others, so I'm wondering.
I have no idea whether this publication was paid for by the region, and I'm not aware of the other councillors that you're referring to.
Okay, well, apparently there was one in Fort Erie and there's one in Grimsby. But in any case, I would like to get the answer to that, because if it was paid with regional dollars, then I would take even greater offense. So I would like to know if that was the case.
Mr. Louie, you
Sure. Through your worship to Councillor Desmarais, I did suspect that that would be asked at council today. So I proactively asked the regional CAO both of those questions, if it was done in other jurisdictions in Niagara with similar content, and if it was paid for out of the regional budget, which, I mean, presumably it was because of the regional logo displayed, you know, right on the publication. I did not get an answer, unfortunately. That was later in the day that I sent that, and there was a regional strategic planning activity today, and it's probably the reason I didn't get an answer. But when I do get an answer, I can either bring that back to the next council meeting or send it to all of council via email.
Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just applaud you for bringing that up tonight. I was going to bring it up under councillors' items and ask you to do that. I was offended by those comments. You know, I've said many times as a councillor, you work hard for the taxpayer. And he should be working hard for the taxpayer instead of pointing his finger at us. And I was not pleased, and I hope you get to the bottom of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Danch.
I got a question on this hydro thing, and a couple of my retail merchant friends have asked me. There's a huge loss for retailers, Italian Hall, you know, like all kinds of things went on there. I mean, you know, we have consecutive days with hydro loss and stuff like that. You can't go somewhere else to get your hydro. I mean, you don't like the store, you go to another store. You don't like the dress, you go to buy another dress somewhere else. This is nonsense. I personally have a generator on my home to protect my home from my sump pump. If this would have been a different time of year, winter months, you'd have had huge more problems. You know, this letter stating that they're all sorry and stuff like that and blaming Ontario Hydro, we can't go anywhere else. And I think they really need to try a whole lot harder and maybe even look at giving us back a little pinch and saying like, we're sorry and we're gonna give, I mean, we're only talking about Port Colborne. But I mean, maybe they could give us a little break for a change, because all they do is up our rates, but they don't give us nothing back when merchants, the one guy I talked to said he lost $21,000 in sales with that hydro outage. That's huge money. Loss of wages that he has to pay, and of course, not his fault. So I think we need to get on these guys a little bit and say, this letter is really nice, but we need a better service from you people. I had to bring that up because he asked me to bring it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Danch. Any other comments on that point? We must acknowledge, though, that on the Friday night, the power went down because there were 6 transmission towers that went down. And I don't have real responsibility for that, but they have to work like crazy to get the transmission back up.
So do I agree to pay the tax.
And the one on Saturday was those ash trees that had come down on top of lines. That's going to happen on a more frequent basis when these lines come down on hydro property as well as on city properties. So that's going to be a continuing problem, which will be addressed by cutting down the trees that are dead.
We're blaming the squirrels sometimes.
Thank you, Mr. Danch, for your comments. Okay. Regional Councilors report. Mr. Barrick is not with us this evening, so we will not have a report. Councilors, order please. Councilors' items, are there any inquiries of members of council? Look at the hands, like to see them. Mr. Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to maybe Chris. Chris, there was some miscommunication at the Sherkson Community Center between, I guess, our staff and the volunteer group that runs that. And I think you were copied on an email, and I just want to hear that we're going to put in some proper protocol both ways for communications.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodner. Yes, I was copied on the emails. You're correct in that. Subsequently, I've had discussions with my immediate staff that were dealing with the water system specifically. And then also later this afternoon, I actually had conversations with community services staff. That being said, we're looking at a protocol to alleviate that from happening in the future, that being a better communications process in both directions, both with us to the people that run the events and the building, and then vice versa back to us when they have something special on. if they can give us a heads up, we can make certain that all the details are taken care of. Simple things like the cistern being topped up or whatever. So that's definitely in the works.
Thank you for that.
Go ahead, Ms. Blonder.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to, I guess, Chris again. Chris, another email came through, the Wildwood Beach, well, the end of Wildwood Road where people use it as a beach. There was an old abandoned water system that's there, and people were concerned that there's pipes in the water and that, so do we have a plan for cleaning that up?
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar. Yes, that being said, we've, because of issues with the high water level and restrictions from the ministry with regards to accessing the water with equipment, we're actually trying to source out a piece of equipment that has a long arm reach so that we don't have to be in the water. We have one on call now that's going to hopefully show up in the next few days if he can free it up. That is the intent, and we should have those out there upon his arrival.
Go ahead, Ms. Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, this might be Dan's, and just because it came up tonight in CNP, one of the problems with power interruption was an ash tree that came down on the line. I think we see this throughout the city. There are dead ash trees, and certainly where I live, there's a number of them. And some are actually partway down, hung up on other trees, and there's a good danger they'll take out the power line if they come down. If the hydro company isn't doing it, how could people initiate, if someone isn't taking care of the trees on their property? Is there a protocol that people could phone the city and, express a concern, and does the city get involved? And this would be on, it's just property, right? It doesn't matter whether it's on a fire lane or a city street. If you could just expand on that. Thank you.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Bodnar. Under our bylaws, if that tree is a dead tree, they need to make a complaint to bylaw enforcement. Then what we do is we inspect, determine if in fact it is on private property. We then issue a notice for the property owner to remediate and remove the tree. If not, then the municipality can do that and charge it back to the property owner.
Thank you very much. That's it for now.
Thank you. Given my comments earlier, I wonder if I could ask Mr. Sinnes to provide some explanation on the flyer from our regional councillor, comparing the region to ourselves.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, definitely I can. As you know, there's basically 4 different items that are on there, and I guess the first one that I'd like to mention is the increase in public debt. Yes, Port Colborne has increased our debt considerably. But I guess the difficulty that I have is the comparisons. When I look at comparing Port Colborne to the Niagara region, it's like David and Goliath type comparison. You're not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing apples to oranges. And the other thing is looking at the reasons and as to why things are happening in Port Colborne. And they're good reasons. The fact that our debt has increased is based on a number of services that we've increased and we've provided. The storm sewer, nickel area storm sewer, a number of other areas that we debentured, water meters, the Lakeshore Road water mains. There was a number of areas that we issued debt on, and the operations center. But for the operations center, we also, for example, we spread out that increase in that debt over a 4-year period. So there's things that council's doing to mitigate a lot of those things. The one item that I noticed on this is that with regard to the increase of the debt is that it's $850 per person in Port Colborne. But that's based on the principal amount of the debt. It's not based on what the taxpayers are paying on an annual basis through the property taxes. And when you look at what we're paying actually in debt on an annual basis, it's about 9% of our budget. But what it does equate to is about $71 per person in Port Colborne when you look at the actual debt payments that are in our budget. So a big difference in what, you know, the per capita basis as to what individuals are paying with regard to our debt. The other area is obviously the property tax levy increases. Tax levy increases are different from every municipality within each municipality. And I think to compare the region to the city, the region has the ability to raise revenues based on the assessment of 12 municipalities. We have the ability to base it on one municipality. So when there's growth in Grimsby and Niagara Falls and some of the other communities, the region has the benefit of the revenue that's generated from the assessment growth in those communities. We don't have that ability in Port Colborne. Our assessment growth isn't as high as some municipalities, and when you combine all the municipalities together, the region definitely has the ability to keep their tax levies lower because they're able to generate more revenue. We don't have that ability. But what this council did do was put in place that because of the fact that the region and the school boards, the province, are able to use the assessment growth, therefore their tax rates or their tax levies are lower. So with those being lower, this council has made the conscious decision that we will use that tax room and look at what it's going to cost the our ratepayers in Port Colborne as a blended rate. So as what it's going to cost them in their pockets at the end of the day. And when you look at what council did for example, from 2015 to 2018, in 2015 our increase was 0.88%. which is about $25 to the average homeowner. In 2016, it was a 1.79%, or $51. In 2017, it was 2.99%, or $87, and last year or this year, 2.69%, or $81. So the difficulty with looking at the percentages can be high, but you have to look at what the bottom line is, and you have to look at what the ratepayers are actually paying, and dollars mean more than percentages. When you look at the city's tax increase, yes, our tax increase may have been it was actually over the last 3 years under 6%. But because we're able to take into account that tax room, this council was able to take advantage of increased levels of services, increased staffing, which is increased levels of services, and to do a number of different things, including the building of a new operations center at a $13 million project, and include those debt payments within those percentage increases. So we're able to do a lot with a little bit of money, and I think that's what's important for the citizens of Port Colborne to know and understand. No different with the water and wastewater billing. When I look at the percentages, yes, in 2 years, the percentages were quite high. But when you look at the dollar, in 2015, it was $120 over the year, annual, to an average homeowner, which is, when you look at $12 a month. So you have to look at, okay, what is reasonable for somebody to be paying for the services that's being provided and the reasons behind it. And if you remember the information that was requested, it wasn't just the numbers that was important, and I sent it to all of council, and I think every potential candidate for election will receive the same information. And that information includes the reasons why this council and staff recommended for certain things to happen. And it was for the betterment of the overall community, and you have to look at those reasons to be valuable. So when you're looking at over 4 years, in water and wastewater billing, it's about $80 a year when you average out the 4 years over those, because it was $120 in 2015, $35 in 2016, $45 in 2017, and $119 this year in 2018. As far as wastewater infrastructure, I think, with Port Colborne, yeah, we put in about $15 to $17 million worth of projects. And we did get some grants to do those projects, which is bonus. And I think with small Port Colborne doing $15 million compared to what the region provided in $40 million within Port Colborne, which is a great thing. I think we're doing okay in putting money into our infrastructure. So those are some of the things, and I think a lot of the detail is in what I've already provided to council. And I think those are the points and the things that you really want to get out to the citizens of Port Colborne.
Thank you, Mr. Sinnes. Other questions of Mr. Sinnes? There being none. Going back to the list, I think Mr. Main, you, then Ms. Demery, and then Mrs. Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was going to be for the regional councillor. I've lived in this town a long time. I don't want to tell you how long, but I did. And we've always had theft, whether it's copper wires, whether it's tin, whether it's steel, whether it's air conditioners. I lost 2 air conditioners myself last year. I know Community Living now has lost a bunch of air conditioners. And it seems to be something that just keeps going and going and going, where people steal stuff. Now, a smashed up air conditioner goes nowhere but the scrapyard. And so I did a little bit of scrapyard research and found out through my own research, taking some junk to my truck, and I could go into the scrapyard, they'd take a look at me, I'd drive in, dump my stuff, come back, get a receipt, sign my name, and drive away. Now I could sign anybody's name, Santa Claus, anybody, right? And out the door I go. Do they do due diligence? I don't really think so. So I contacted the region to find out, maybe we got to change the bylaw. And I know it's a regional bylaw, and I'd like to get some support from this council, maybe to send a letter to everyone. That maybe it's about time these people who come with the scrap and sign Joe Blow's name do photo ID. So I take a refrigerator or I take an air conditioner, receive my money, there's my picture. And at the end of the day, John loses his air conditioner, Port Cares loses their air conditioner. The police can say, I know who took it. Here's their picture, rather than signing Santa Claus's name and collecting the money. So I think it's time that we step up to the plate. There's just way too much theft, too much vandalism, and these people, bless their hearts, they do have to make a living, but they shouldn't have to make a living on my dole or anybody else's. So I just want to put that out and see what everybody thinks. And I think maybe a letter to the regional police or board would help. I did call the regional police board, the officer who was in charge never got a response back. So I thought to myself, really it's not my job. It should be the regional councilor's job to look after that and get it done. So I'd like some opinions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Main. Ms. Demery?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to actually add to what John has already said. I think that there is really some opportunity here to create a better situation in the community by putting a different bylaw in place and doing some policing of the people that are coming in and out of the scrapyards. I mean, yes, people are in many ways, it's very helpful, but they'll come along and they'll pick up things and take them to the scrapyard. That means they're not sitting around the roads. That's a good thing. But there are a lot of illegal uses as well, and this would be able to step down on them and help everybody all the way around. So if we could reach out to both the region and the Niagara Regional Police and see if we can't get that ball started, I think that would be a very good thing, and John's come up with a good idea.
Mr. Main?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did mention there's another issue here, and it's called, somebody could get killed. Now, Mr. Schultz had, I think either 6 or 7 meters during, with the power on, took them right out of the receivers, and away they went. Now, these people who have businesses on West Street were out of pocket, and they were also 5 or 6 hours without their business. And these people could have been, I don't know if you ever pulled a live meter, I'm sure the chief has. There's ways to do it, and there's ways not to do it, and I'm pretty sure that these guys don't know the ways. So that's another part of this. I forgot to put it in there.
Ms. Kenny, do you have a comment on this issue?
I'm just wondering, Mr. Mayor, you're a representative on regional council, if you couldn't bring this forward on behalf of all of us, because I think it's a great idea that Councillor Main has, and I think they should have to have a picture ID and get it on file, and then maybe we'll catch some of them. And no matter where they bring it, they might get wise and take it to another municipality, but whatever. If they have to, if it could be implemented, and they have to bring driver's license, and if that be recorded, I think that's a good way to catch some of the scammers. So I would appreciate if you could bring that forward.
I will, Madam Kenny.
Thank you.
Madam Demery, you still had a comment on?
No, she's going to let me go first.
Oh.
I have a longer list.
She has a long list. I only have one, Mr. Mayor, and I'm always harping on it, I know, but Chris, are we any farther ahead with Trillium Rail Line and the region about the terrible Kalali Street rail line crossing there? It's a mess. I get complaints all the time from people, and my husband is one of them. But what are we doing? What are we doing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kenny. Actually, I've had a brief conversation with the Trillium representatives just on Friday. We are going to try and expedite that quickly with the region. They're also looking at 2 other crossings in town as well. So we hope to bring this to some fruition, if we could, in the very near future.
I've been waiting about a year.
I was hoping before Canal days, if possible, for all of them. So.
Finished, Councillor Kenny? Councillor Demery, for your list.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, I'll start on a really good note. Just Saturday, May 26th is Community Safety Day, and that will be happening at the Fire Hall on Mellenby, 11 a.m. till 2 p.m., free for all. Come, have your kids come, learn about being safe in the community, have a great time doing it. The fire department certainly steps up on this and makes it all happen. The Optimist is on board with it. There will be a bike rodeo. There's all kinds of giveaways. Fire obstacle course, quite a lot going on that day. So please do come out and enjoy that time. That's the good news. Now we're going to move on to a few of the other ones. And the first one will be for Dan. Dan, Janet Street and transport parking. Again, the residents there have been calling me that it was okay for a while, but the transport truck is back now, and it's quite a long time every morning that it turns on and warms up and wakes everyone up and then leaves. So that's a real problem for them. So possibly we could get back on that again. Sound good?
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demaray, absolutely. Once that individual sees the infraction, bylaw enforcement needs to know the time so they can witness it firsthand in order to move forward on the violation.
Okay, well, just to make it maybe a little clearer, this is an ongoing issue, and it happens all the time. Most of the time when it does happen, when I get the call, it's midnight or it's something like that. There's no one there no one from bylaw there to speak to the issue. The next day the truck is moved. It may or may not come back another day. It's hard to say. It could be only 3 times in the week. It might be 5 times in the week. It's something that, considering we know that it's happened and have already ticketed this person a few times, could we not just, as a rule, bylaw people, step by, check it out? It doesn't hurt. If you're on shift, go see it. It would just help.
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demaray, yes, we can do that. If we need to have a special shift to witness that, that would be good to know ahead of time so staff can actually be scheduled to witness it.
Okay. I'll speak with Sherry again on it, then I'll just send her an email about it just to update, because I just got the call again, so, okay. Thank you. All right, so moving on, the next one would be for Chris. Chris, this is about, and we've spoken a little bit about, this is about Kalali Street East, the section, the north side of Kalali Street East. And basically, it's a section right from Wellington all the way over to Elizabeth. That whole strip, there's no drainage along that strip. There's a lot of ponding that goes on. The residents there would like us to see if we can't grade it and put some stone on it. We've done that in the past because there just really are no other options to get rid of the water. So possibly you could take that with, in particular, right around Braebuff Hall. That area in there is the worst area. And also in right there at that point, you'll see a sidewalk that's kind of V'd in. That collects a lot of water. If we could do something about that in the sidewalk work this year would be good. Okay, that's one. Two, actually. And another one for you, Chris, would be the region installed the crosswalk at Wellington and Main and left a pile of rubble there and have yet not picked it up. That's been quite some time now. It's over a year anyway. They've not picked it up yet. So if we could, this was going to be for the regional councillor again, but he's not here. Mayor Maloney could maybe speak about that as well. So if they could get that cleaned up, that would be helpful. The resident there would also like to know if there are any plans, and this would probably, because it's a regional road, I would imagine this goes to the region, but are there any plans for a sidewalk and curbs along the south side of Main Street, going all the way over, and that would be from basically Welland Street all the way over to Elizabeth Street. There's really not a lot of option for people to walk along there. He's asking about that. So if there are any plans for anything like that, it would be something to let him know that. So do we know of any plans at this time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demery. There's nothing that the region has indicated that's on their radar with regards to any sidewalk on Main Street, so
Okay. All right,
we have no knowledge of it.
Could we maybe put that on their radar? That's something that we'd like to see them at least take a look at?
Yes, we
We
could.
can definitely do that.
That would be great. All right, so there's that. I just have one more item, and that again would be for Chris. And Chris, this is just, I'd like to have an East Village update as to how the construction is going, where we're at, what is left to be done. I'm getting less calls, so I know we're close, but I'd just like to have that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demery. Yes, my understanding is that the asphalt is basically completed. There's some sodding and topsoil that has to be done yet, and that has been delayed because of the inavailability of sod at this point. Because of the wet weather we've had the last couple of weeks, they haven't been able to harvest any sod yet. So that's strictly what we're waiting for, is that.
Okay, that's good. So all the hookups have been done. You know how the black pipes are sticking out and people are
There are still a few of those that are being handled by the plumber, and they have been going door to door, my understanding, to handle those specifically on an individual basis.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. That's everything.
Alderman Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a follow-up to Councillor Demery, through you to Chris. Chris, are our on-call foremen not deputized for that purpose to hand out a ticket, or any of them deputized to do so? Well, maybe we should think about doing that. So instead of having, they're on call anyway, so if a taxpayer would call the on-call foreman, then perhaps that would be a way to end this individual's running his vehicle or keeping it warm or whatever he's doing. Is that possible through you or through Mr. Aquilina, one or the other, just to find out if that's possible?
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kenny, there are two things that are important. The fact, if we're actually issuing a parking ticket, if he's in violation of the parking bylaw, that's one thing that council actually has employees that are not bylaw officers that have been able to do that. But if it's a zoning matter, of a zoning violation, that matter can't be done by any municipal staff other than bylaw enforcement. If it's a zoning matter.
Do we know that from the last tickets that have been issued to this individual? Is it zoning or is it parking?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kenny, my understanding, I'll have to double check, my understanding it's a zoning matter, because zoning actually is in place that does not allow transport trucks to be in residential neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
It's Mr. Bodnar, then Mr. Elliott.
I was just gonna ask, Andrew, are you done? I'm done. No, because sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just because I wanted to ask a question about that while we're talking about that, Dan, with the parking issue. Do we not have an idling bylaw?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Elliott, I am not sure, I recall there was some discussion whether or not if council actually pushed forward and put a bylaw in place. I can't comment, I'd have to look into it, get back to council.
Okay. Could you send us an email if you find out one way or the other?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Can I just, I got a couple of things to ask about. Pick on Chris Knight, okay. When that sod comes in, let me know, because I'm looking for some. With regards to Sunset Park, just to let everybody know that there's a public meeting on Wednesday, 6 o'clock, here on 3rd floor, with regards to the basketball court and some other updates that we're doing. With regards to that, did we hand deliver or mail out to the residents that are abutting the park to make sure that they got notice?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Elliott. I know that was in the plans. Whether that's been completed or not yet, I can't comment.
Can you find out and let me know?
I will let you know
ASAP.
via email tomorrow.
ASAP, thank you. Because that was our goal, is to directly invite the people whose backyard's back onto the park. So I know that they really wanted to be notified personally when we had that meeting, just so that they don't miss it. Second of all, beautiful day today. I was out cleaning up my yard, raking the boulevard. And this year, more so than any other year, I noticed the amount of, I'll say, leftover sand, silt on the boulevard. And Chris, I'll ask this to you. How often do we review the amount of sanding as opposed to just straight plowing? Do we do? I know I'm on a main street and it gets a lot of traffic and it gets a lot of sand, but it just looked like there was a lot more this year than in past. So do we monitor that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Elliott. Yes, actually, the sand application is consistent. It's just the number of storms that fit into that criteria. So if the depth of the snow within a storm is less than, say, 4 inches, then there's a lot more sand applied because the sanding is done as opposed to the plowing first. So what happens is you end up applying more sand multiple times through the season if the snow events are of an inch or less than that. So that's basically what's happened from my understanding for this past winter. We didn't get a lot of big events, but we had a lot of continuous events, like every other day almost. So that creates a large consumption of sand, which is obviously going on the streets and some eventually ending up in the boulevards as well as their catch basins.
Okay. And speaking to that, is it more cost effective to do the sanding as opposed to plowing? I mean, when you're sanding, it seems like you're applying a substance that you have to pay for and the truck's going down the street. If you're just plowing, you're just plowing the snow off the road and you're not using something that you have to purchase. So where does it come into play with regards to maintenance of roads during winter events?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Elliott. Actually, there are provincial standards for minimum maintenance that we have to conform to, and this is what we're following. So those standards dictate when and where and how we do things. So we don't really want to mess with the minimum maintenance standards because of the legal implications and things involved with that as far as liability goes.
Okay, and one last quick question. With regard to line painting on the roads, has it started yet?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Elliott. Actually, the contractor should be in next week. That's already in his schedule to do.
Okay.
So the first application should be done before the end of the month.
Perfect. And the next question I was going to ask was second application will be, because we are going to twice yearly,
Second
right?
application will be in early to late October, early to mid-October.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's all.
Mr. Danish, and then Mr. Bodnar.
Well, I guess our regional representative's not here, so I'm going to ask Chris this question. we painted the lines on Main Street, we washed the sidewalks on Main Street, but we've yet to clean the gutters on Main Street. Is that not putting the horse, with the cart and all that kind of stuff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dance. Actually, we haven't received any requests from the region to do street sweeping on their behalf. We suspect that they may have an outside contractor that's been hired but hasn't shown yet. But we can make that call tomorrow to see what their agenda is.
Just because that's where I spend my days, and I can't believe how much stuff is sitting next to the road, and it's just not going anywhere, and you can wash them sidewalks off all you want, but it doesn't get rid of the junk on the side of the road. The other thing I had was, about, I guess, 2 months ago, I had requested a little look at Nolan Highland, and I had asked about a stop sign there, and then I backed off, and I said, well, maybe we could have a look and get NRPD down there. And so one of the homeowners was in the other day and said that he's never saw any type of enforcement, and the cars are just whipping up and down the street. So I guess I'll ask again if the mayor could possibly send something to NRPD and see if we can slow down some traffic. He's telling me that people are basically using that street as a shortcut to get around the Steel Street light, and they're ripping down Knoll Street, and there's a lot of children crossing that road going to St. John Bosco, and he's got some concerns. So if someone could look into that for me, please, I would appreciate it. That is all.
Look into that for you, Mr. Dance. Mr. Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Chris, just to pick up on the line painting. Will we be doing lines at the end of Pleasant Beach Road, where we have the angle parking for the beach? I was down there today and noticed there are no lines. Is that something we do in the line painting contract?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Bodnar. Actually, we can do those in-house with our own staff,
Okay.
so we can expedite that a little quicker.
All right. And in that same area, because we've put the garbage container there now and taken away a few spots, and there are spots still in front of the restaurant, do we have that, those spots in front of the restaurant labeled somehow of 2-hour parking or whatever would be required for the restaurant? I thought of it after I drove away, just because people may, if the idea is to keep those for the restaurant, then, I think they're going to be taken up by people that are at the beach all day. So I just wonder whether you could look into that and whether that's even an option.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Bonner, my recollection is that there is no timed parking, but that's something that we could bring forward to council for consideration in the future.
Sure, I just wonder whether we could check with the restaurant. It just seemed like maybe a neighborly thing to do if we're taking away parking, and, it may be a turnover for the restaurant. So. And one more, Mr. Merritt, to Chris, and I don't think this is our responsibility, but it certainly is a concern. At the end of Empire Road and Highway 3, when you're turning on Empire Road, say coming from the city, there's an awful lot of stone that was on that intersection. And I would assume it's the Department of Highways that cleans that. And they cleaned it on Friday. And today, there's almost as much stone there again. I don't remember this happening other years, but whatever is going on there, trucks turning, I would think. If a motorcycle was to come off of there and, at a good rate of speed, there's a lot of stone on that road. So it just seems weird that they cleaned it off on Friday before I could actually call. And today, it's there again. So I just wonder whether you can check with the Department of Highways to see if there's something weird going on there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor to Councillor Bodnar. Actually, we have the same problem at Holloway Bay as well.
Okay.
We've been communicating, staff has been with the MTO about our concerns about that, specifically, as you stated, motorcycles could come around there, especially at night. They wouldn't see that until they're on top of it. And we've asked them to be diligent in their removal of the stone. Apparently, it has something to do with the fact that they've done some new shouldering in there, and this new stone is rolling around, so we will keep on them about that.
Well, I think it's a big safety concern, and with the amount of extra summer traffic we're getting now, I think we need to figure that out rather quickly. Thank you very much.
Any other questions by council, members of staff? I just have one, Mr. Eccleston, could we have an update on that issue of sidewalks on 1 street only, out in the Westwood subdivision?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council, I did talk to Todd Schultz following that same night to council. As I said, council, I have his cell number, and we were texting as the meeting was going on. So the conversation then we had the following day that Mr. Schultz, Todd, was going to provide me the list of all properties that have purchased lots within the subdivision plan. I have still not received the final list of individuals.
Or we're not moving ahead until that issue comes back to this council?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. As I mentioned to council, I want to get all the names of all the individuals that own the properties, not just in the first stage of the subdivision plan, but to get a list of all property owners throughout the plan of subdivision to discuss what their thoughts are regarding a sidewalk in the future. I do not want to go to council with, a piecemeal information and then have something occur to then have to go back to council again for the next stage of the development. I would like to have an answer if a sidewalk is going to be needed whatsoever within that plan of subdivision.
Thank you. Now I move on to, yes, one more, Mr. Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to the sidewalk issue, if we were to go ahead to the new section and have the developer put a sidewalk in from Clarence to Cement, or on Clarence to Cement Road, and then I'm assuming we're going to go back to where the new part of the development starts, correct? Like from Wood Lane going west.
Through Mr. Mayor,
And I'm putting that out there just because that's what was supposed to be done, that little tiny section, correct? On Clarence.
the plan of subdivision, not going back, the former plan of subdivision, I'm referring to the latest plan that was
Correct.
approved, because I
Correct.
know that council made the decision not to have sidewalks on the very first phase of that development, like that, I'm going back 20 years ago. So
Right.
my report to council will deal specifically with the newest plan of subdivision.
And that's, leads to my question. If we have him install the sidewalk from Wood Lane, basically just one property west of Wood Lane on Clarence Street, from Clarence to Cement, would then it be incumbent upon us to finish the sidewalk from Wood Lane to Rosemount to have continuity? Because in my mind, you have a little tiny sidewalk on Clarence Street that goes from this house to like that house, and then the rest of Clarence Street to Rosemount has no sidewalk.
Through
So
Mr.
would we, for continuity's sake, would we then go in and install from Wood Lane all the way back to Rosemount to finish the sidewalk off and make it a complete sidewalk all the way down Clarence Street right to Cement Road?
Through Mr. Mayor, that would be a direction of council if that's what council would want to do. Because the original developer was to put sidewalks in. The council of that day decided not to go forward with doing that. So as part of my report, council will have to make a consideration, given that information, does council not want to have a sidewalk within this current plan of subdivision? That may be information that council consider with not allowing sidewalks within this latest plan of subdivision, this phase.
Okay, so in the original plan for the first part, the sidewalk was supposed to be installed as per plan of subdivision, but wasn't installed.
Through Mr. Mayor, when the plan of subdivision was approved by council in the early 80s, I'm assuming, it was supposed to be in place, but council then received information to make a decision because the neighbors petitioned. Council then decided not to have the developer put in a sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
So fast forwarding to today, council's in the same
Same thing.
not going to say predicament, the same
Yeah, okay.
determination.
Just to clear that up. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Staff responses to previous inquiries, and we have Ms. Gregg with her hand up, and then Fire Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to introduce Nicole Hallis. She's the new manager of Parks and Recreation for the city. Nicole comes to the city with a wealth of knowledge and experience related to Parks and Rec and programming. She's been in the position for approximately 1 month now, and we're very happy and pleased to have her aboard.
Welcome, Nicole. Thank you for being on board. We appreciate your presence and look forward to some good years on the Parks Department. Any questions of Ms. Hallis? There being none, you got our flight tonight. Okay, Chief Cartwright.
Thank you, Your Worship. 2 points. The first one is, I think I'd mentioned this previously, but just to make sure everybody's on the same page, we are doing the door-to-door campaign for smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. The volunteers are participating on Tuesday nights as well. We're going to be expanding it into the rural area as soon as weather permits, and there's a new program that we're about to announce that council will be made aware of at the next council meeting when we have the final product in place. The second thing I need to put out here this evening, because the TVs are here, is that we've got some misinformation in the community going out about smoke alarms, as well as our rights to entry into buildings. As council is aware, we use a passive approach with regards to going into homes with the hope that the homeowners will allow us to come in and make sure their homes are safe. We do have the right under the Ontario Fire Code to enter a home. If we so wish, we would have to do that with the assistance of a judge and get a warrant. We do not do that with the hope that the community will allow us to come in and make sure their homes are safe. The second issue is that there's some further misinformation with regards to the replacement of electrical smoke alarms. For whatever the reason, there's misinformation in the community in the sense that you can't just put up a normal battery-operated smoke alarm if you already have a hardwired smoke alarm in place. You have to replace it with a hardwired smoke alarm. The fire code does not allow protection of a lesser degree, and by putting up a regularly operated smoke alarm in place of a hardwired smoke alarm, it's lesser, so it's not acceptable. We've run into that just recently at a home in which the lady had been told by an individual in the community that they didn't have to listen to us, they could do whatever they wanted. And we've gone in and we actually reinstalled the electrical smoke alarms in her home to make sure she was safe. She was an elderly lady, so we made sure that she was safe. We just finished that today. So I just wanted to get that out in the community so everybody knows if you got an electrical smoke alarm that is 10 years old or older and needs to be replaced, it has to be replaced with a hardwired electrical smoke alarm. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any other comments by staff? There being none, let's move on to consideration of items requiring separate discussion. Item number 1. Mr. Maine, that was pulled by yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is what I deferred
Before Mr. Maine gets into it, I might indicate that there's a representative here from Mark and Indemnification Technology, as well as our own insurer, Mr. McAvoy, and another local insurance, Mr. Steele, and there's another third gentleman sitting there. I'm not sure if he's with either of you two fellows. So. Okay. You're with Mr. Steele? Yes. Okay. Okay. You're Zach Bull? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Steele, you wanted to come forward?
Sure. Want to go first?
Sure. I'll ask you to go first, and maybe Mr. Bull.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council, staff, members of the public that are here and on TV. Just to answer a question from Mr. Elliott, no, we have not received a letter with regards to the meeting Wednesday night. I live on the park. Sunset Park, they put a nice, beautiful new playground in there this week. They're just finishing it off, so nothing has been sent to us. Although I am coming to the meeting on Wednesday, I do know about it. And so do a number of the neighbors. Anyways, again, thank you for allowing us to be here. This came to our attention. Zach Bowles, president of the Niagara South Insurance Brokers Association. I'm here both on behalf of the NSIBA as vice president and also a business owner within the community and a taxpayer within the community. Many things have been said throughout the province of Ontario with regards to this issue. We contacted both Zach and I, as well as Mr. McAvoy, who's the broker of record for the City of Port Colborne's insurer. And all of us have contacted our Ontario Association and received information back from them. I've researched this through my insurers. I know Zach has spoken to some insurers that he has that I don't deal with, and a few of the other markets around that deal with other brokers within the community. I mean, there are differing opinions on this. Yes, insurance policies do carry a degree of protection for the homeowner, business owner, depending on the type of policy you have, where there can be a reimbursement of fire department charges. With that being said, I know the city has looked at only one company that has only come forward, and I was a little bit surprised that as a taxpayer that they haven't gone out to see if there's anybody else that does it, or is it more efficient for the city to do this on their own. As a taxpayer, I would hope that with the 8 to 10 fires the fire chief says we on average have annually, that for those 8 to 10 fires where the fire chief is preparing reports, that our staff couldn't do this already. So without paying somebody 30% to do this, it would actually garner the community more money. On that thought, what has come through the market that you have in your on your docket this evening is the fact that people are paying for this service already through their insurance policy. I mean, that could be argued yes and no, because quite frankly in Ontario this is something fairly new. In other parts of the country it has been ongoing for more years than it has here. And a lot of these policies are cross-country. The wordings are the same. So a lot of these coverages are in there to make everything a lot easier for adjusters when they're doing claims across country. On May the 4th, we had the major windstorm through Port Colborne, but basically from Windsor to almost Ottawa. And you'll see that adjusters from across Canada for insurance companies will come forward into Niagara, into Toronto, into Windsor, and points in between, and work on those policies. So to have a consistent wording, a lot of these things are in there. But don't be fooled by somebody that tells you their insurance rates may not go up because of this. Insurance rates are based on losses. So homeowners can have a claims-free discount on their policy. They can also have a protection against the first-time claim where their rates don't go up, or they can lose that claims-free on any claim, whether it's a fire claim, a water claim. So with that, insurance companies will look at the cost of settling claims in an area. So it could have an impact on insurance rates. Not saying with the 8 to 10 that we have in Port Colborne that could happen, but it can. So for somebody to say no, as Fire Marquee has said in their information, is not really forthwith as far as I'm concerned. And that was something that was brought forward by the Insurance Brokers Association of Ontario in contacting Fire Marquee back in 2016 with regards to this. They asked at that time that some of the inaccuracies, both on their website and in their paraphernalia that they go to town councils, city councils, township councils across this province with, that they just clarify some of these things that quite aren't up to snuff as far as the Ontario Insurance Brokers Association. It's been 2 years to this date, those things haven't been changed. So, and that was just in the last few weeks that we've contacted our Brokers Association. Now, wordings across Ontario, some companies can be similar, but nobody is the same. Intact Insurance Company, for instance, the largest insurer in Canada on homeowners and automobile insurance, probably one of the largest in Ontario, does cover fire department charges. They don't have a limit. This is how their policy reads. We will reimburse you, being the policyholder or the homeowner, in this case it's a homeowner's policy, for charges incurred if a fire department charges for attending your home because of an insured peril. this coverage is not subject to a deductible. So if you had a fire that was below your deductible, depending on what deductible you may carry, they can come along and pay for this. And I think Mr. McAvoy pointed that out in his letter to the fire chief, which everybody here has. Which is fine, but they'll reimburse you. They're not going to reimburse Fire Marquee. They're going to you pay it, and they'll reimburse you. So no matter what the charge is, based on what happens in a fire, you have to pay it, and this insurer will pay it up front. So right now, there is no fire department charges in Port Colborne, so everybody in Port Colborne is free and clear as far as worrying about paying that bill, no matter what that bill is. I mean, you can take a small house fire, you can take a large commercial fire like we had at Vinyl Works. I can just imagine the cost of that fire. And within your bylaw that you're going to charge for fires, I mean, I don't know how you're going to pick and choose on what amount you're going to charge people. To be quite honest, if the cost of a fire is the cost of a fire is the cost of a fire. So whether it's $8,000, $10,000, or $50,000, if you're going to charge for this, you got to charge full freight. It's the only way to be fair to somebody. Because if I have a policy that carries $10,000, and we'll say Mr. Bull has a policy that carries $8,000, and the cost of the fire is $10,000, based on what I've read and what I've talked to the fire chief, is that they'll bill Mr. Bull $8,000 and me $10,000. Not only am I subsidizing Mr. Bull through my coverage and his coverage, but I'm subsidizing him through my taxes now. Because now my taxes are going to offset the difference in $2,000. So I think you've got to be very cognizant on how you do this. I think you're kind of putting, as Councillor Danch said earlier, the cart before the horse on this issue. I think if you really want to do it, and I'm not here to say yay or nay to this, but as a taxpayer, I'm very leery on how this is going to be implemented. So to sign a contract with a company based on what I've seen, I think is we should stand back and say, whoa on this. Look at a bylaw first. Find out what other communities are doing within their bylaws. Look at alternatives. You've had an alternative come through your broker of record with regards to what the adjuster can do on their behalf, which is actually a lower rate than what Fire Marquee is charging. Then you've got to look at what that bylaw and how you're going to apply it. So is it going to be to the maximum of each policy, which, to be quite honest, I don't know how you can determine that with all the insurers across this province, and some may have it, may not have it, and the limits are going to vary depending on whether it's a personal insurance policy, commercial insurance policy. So I think you have to look at that, because if you're going to start billing people and not bill them the right amount, it's not fair. It's not fair to the taxpayer. And I think that really has to be looked at. And again, I think you got to look out in the market and see what's there before you make a decision on one company that has come forward. Some Brokers Association in the Township of Perth East have come up with a number of answers to these questions. I'll just read a few here. If the township does not reduce taxes due to the increased revenue to the fire department, the result will be increased cost to taxpayers, increased claims cost to insurers, resulting in premium increases. That was a Perth Huron Insurance Brokers Association. I did earlier speak on the fire department doing this with 8 to 10 fires on average a year. It's probably a prudent idea to look at. The other one I wanted to bring forward here was from the Windsor Star. It was an interview with the Windsor Fire Chief. I'd just like to read this. Windsor Fire Chief Bruce Montone said the city rejected the idea of doing what Kingsville is considering, Kingsville being another community beside Windsor. Montone pointed to Section 76 of Ontario's Fire Protection and Prevention Act, which says, "No action shall be brought against any person in whose house or building or on whose land any fire accidentally begins, nor shall any recompense be made by that person for any damage suffered thereby." Montone said the only way to recoup costs from insurance companies is to send the owner a bill. That, the city's legal department told Montone, goes against the spirit of the legislation. Montone said pursuing non-residents for responding to car crashes is different because those people don't pay taxes in the municipality. That's the case for owners of that is not the case for owners of houses, garages, sheds, and other structures, Montone said. You're paying tax dollars to create and operate my department, and then I'm going to charge you when you use my services? Montone said he is certain the practice will lead to higher insurance premiums. Show me a claim that has never found a way to your wallet.
Mr.
I
Steele.
won't 100% agree to him on that.
Mr. Steele, you got roughly a minute.
Thank you, Your Worship. So on behalf of our association, on behalf of Mr. Bull and I would just ask that maybe you take a step back at this time, speak to your broker of record with regards to this, what other ways to do it. But I think you have to come up with a bylaw first, because I'm going to step out of my insurance shoes, I'm going to step into my tax shoes and state that if I've got to subsidize somebody through my taxes, I'll be here more often, because I don't think that's a good idea. And I think Chief Montone from the City of Windsor said it best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Any
Steele.
questions?
Any questions? Council. Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Through to Bill. Just a couple quick questions, because insurance baffles me. I guess right off the top, insurance companies have an expectation to pay these claims, or they wouldn't be in your policy, correct? That's why they're there?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's part of your policy. So is there an expectation to pay that? I think in Ontario, not really, because it is a fairly new concept within the province of Ontario. I mean, this is the first time I've ever heard it in our area at all, and I know there is one municipality that's gone through with this. But again, most of these policies, aside from those mutuals that are within the province of Ontario only, there are certain mutuals like Erie Mutual out of Dunnville, Purdy and Clinton out of Welland, that don't deal beyond the borders of Ontario. So their policies may or may not include it. I don't know. I don't deal with those companies. But the Intacts of the world, the Avivas of the world, Wamanisas, a number of others, Allstate, the former State Farm, which is now Desjardins, do deal across the whole country. But they do like to keep consistency across the country. As I said, in talking to our Brokers Association, this is something that's happened in other jurisdictions in Canada that has been there embedded for years. So that's why a lot of it's there, so that when it does come into play. But again, you're going to see limits in some policies. You're going to see some policies like Intacts, which is, there is no limit. But you will find that the insurance company will pay the insured, because the insured is part of the policy. Fire Marquee is not part of the policy. They're not a player in this. They have no vested interest in this. They're just a collection agency. So if the fire department bills the homeowner for the fire, or the business owner for the fire, they pay that. They submit the bill to their insurance company. They'll pay up to the limit of their policy, depending on what that is. However, if the limit on their policy is less than what the fire department states are charges, then that person is responsible for the overage on that. So if the fire chief does a report that says it's 10,000, I have 8,000 in coverage, I'm responsible to pay that extra too, because my policy may only cover up to $8,000.
Yeah. Okay. And that's the part that I understood, that we were only, the fire department would only go after what the insured was covered for and nothing more. So that it wouldn't be an out-of-pocket expense for an insured, that if the cost of going to the fire was 10,000, they were only covered for 8. They would only draw back on the 8,000 that was payable by the insurance company, and not have an onus be put on the homeowner. So they wouldn't be out of pocket. I don't know how you figure out what the policy covers and what it doesn't. And with the fire, the quote you had from Windsor and from Kingsville. So if you're not actually putting the onus on the property owner to pay, you may have to pay up front, but you're going to recoup your money. That's really not them paying. If you made that claim against your insurance company, what would you lose to raise your rates? You'd lose your claims-free discount?
You may, depending if you had that protection. I mean, you can buy that first claim free under your homeowners, like they've had for auto insurance, same idea.
Yeah.
That first waiver of claim. But depending on the company, you can run anywhere from 10 to 25% in claims-free discount. So,
Yeah.
you know, there is that cost. But again, I mean, you know, if you take Port Colborne on the whole, you know, are rates going to go through the roof because you do this? Well, no. I mean, I think we all agree on that. Could they be affected? Yes. But all of a sudden, if this is going to be a trend across the province, and all of a sudden claims costs go up, where do you get the money from? From the paying insurance public. Nobody else pays the policy except for me and everybody in this room that has homeowners and auto insurance. We pay the bill. So as those bills go up,
Yeah.
our bill goes up,
So let me put you on the spot.
whether we agree with it or not.
Yeah,
So,
let me put you on the spot.
yeah.
Why wouldn't the insurance companies just take that right out of the policies?
That was one comment a company made to me. They just may come across in Ontario and take it out. They may. Yep. Can I, maybe Mr. McAvoy may want to answer that?
We'll leave that for Mr. McAvoy to answer.
Okay, great.
That's it, I'm good.
Thank you.
Any other questions of
That
Mr.
it?
Steele?
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. Appreciate it. Thank you, members of council.
Thank you. Mr. Tim McAvoy?
Probably happy to hear that I don't have a presentation. All I did was try to investigate as best I could. I work for the city, so help to try to guide you whichever best way and make the best decision you can. And I must admit, I when we talk about homeowners, Mr. Bull and Mr. Still are probably a little better versed. I'm more in the commercial end of it. If you want me to answer a question on that, unfortunately, I've been in the business a little bit longer than everybody, and I started quite some time ago as an adjuster. Back then, policies were silent on things, not just fire department charges, but a huge raft of things. If you look in the policies these days, it just goes on and on. So it was pretty much silent, and originally they started to put limits in there, and the reason was to put a limit on what was going to cost them, so that they know, yes, I have a house that's worth $100,000, but I don't end with another $110,000 because of these extra charges. So the original intent was to put limits on this stuff. As time goes by and the policies become more and more comprehensive, a lot of the limits have been taken out. In my report, I spoke to the commercial end of it, where I said that there's quite often a basket of coverages for a claim. I actually looked into a couple specifically after I sent the report in, and that is the way their trend is going now. Fire department charges along with probably 25 other coverages with one big limit. So you don't know what you really have until you prioritize your own claim, figure out where it is, and then at the end of the day, if there's $5,000 left over for fire department charges, fine and dandy. So I can't speak to how they work because I haven't seen how they're going to not charge somebody or back off somebody. The chief is going to laugh in a second because I had the unfortunate incident about 3 days after sending the report to him of the fire department visiting my office. No, you haven't. No. And on that note, because it wasn't too serious, we're not putting a claim in, but in theory, we could get a fire department bill. I don't know how they would figure that out. That wasn't supplied information to me, so I can't answer that question. Probably better off if you have any individual questions, anything.
Mr. Elliott, you had a question that you asked that Mr. McAvoy said he can answer it. Do you recall what that was?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Tim. I think you kind of answered it when you said it's kind of like your Cogeco package for TV, right? When you buy one thing, you get everything, right? Here's the package. This is what you're signing up for. And you may not even know you have this coverage unless you read through the details to find out exactly what you have. I guess I look at it from that perspective, right? If it's in your coverage, the expectation is in the event of a fire, you may get a bill and the insurance companies will pay that. That's their expectation because that's why it's there. Mm-hmm. So I guess I can see both sides of the equation. And it's kind of like what Bill was talking about with car insurance, right? If you're out of town and you have an accident, you get a bill if you're not a resident of the municipality that you had the accident on Kings Highway. And I keep thinking, well, if I'm going to Fort Erie through Port Colborne out to Dunnville or something and have the misfortune of having an accident, I'm from out of town because it's the only way to go, I get a bill because I'm out of town, but that's the only road that I can drive on. So you're kind of betwixt and between. This is what I'm thinking here. Yes, it would be okay, but how do you know, the biggest question is, how do you know what the limit to the coverage is before you remit the bill? That's what I'm kind of having an issue with.
Well, here, sorry to answer that. I would say that if it's one of the major insurers, in my report I quoted from the two largest in Canada. When it comes to homeowners, they're identical, which surprised me because usually there's a little bit of change, but they were identical, and that was the reimbursement thing. you know what, there's, I forget how many companies there are in Ontario, 200 and some odd. Anything from a farm mutual to whatever, you need their individual policies, which could be changed year to year, whenever they decide to do it. So you'd have to have all those and look ahead and decide that, okay, this person's got this person has that. And assuming that the, one of the other criteria is that the homeowner or business owner puts in a claim, then these would tag along. And as I said, I don't think that the 8 to 10 in Port Colborne is going to make a difference. But the biggest thing, and again, maybe Mr. Sealer-Bull could talk to this better than I could, the metrics these days that the insurance companies are using, you can have two people side by side, and one's this high and the one's that way. And we can't figure it out until you punch everything into the computer. And sometimes they won't tell you what it is because it's their own formula that they have designed to make money or whatever they do. You know, would a difference between a $5,000 and a $20,000 claim make a difference? I can't for 100% say yes or no to that. I just don't know. And I don't know if you would have a better answer than I would on that one. So they've been doing it with auto on a very careful basis because that's highly regulated, but the property policies are wide open, short of, you know, doing something against the rules.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Mr. McAvoy. Mr. Wagner had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. McAvoy. You work for the city as so if there was a claim put in by the fire department, could you be the one that actually goes after the homeowner for a fee, the same as Fire Marquee is suggesting?
It isn't something that our firm would do, but in my questioning, the first person I phoned was actually the control adjuster for the city. He's the main contact and everything else, and to be fair, he is, again, he's commercial oriented. His main focus, 99%, is liability claims. So I asked him the question. He really didn't have any knowledge on the subject, and I said, you know, could you check around, because they have offices across the country. Could you do a little bit of checking and get back to me? And he came back about 2 or 3 days later and said that yes, from time to time they do recoveries. And then when he spoke to one of his people, he said, well, that's something we could do. And I just said, well, how did you do it in the past? So I took what they've done in the past for other recoveries. I'm not talking about fire department charges here, but other subrogation coverages. And that's where that chart came from. You know, how would they, you know, what would they come up with, and ultimately what kind of program could they offer? We'd have to, I'd prefer get a formal proposal from them, not just off the cuff.
Any other questions of Mr. McAvoy? Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Demery.
Mr. McAvoy,
Aye.
you're a broker. You came here to give us advice, you said.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your advice? You can beat around the bush all you want, but I want to know.
I work at the pleasure of council.
That's pretty sneaky. No.
It is a little bit, but you know what? I can see arguments on both sides. And I get it. You know, as a broker usually thinks, you know, okay, this person has the same cover as that person, or it's different circumstances. I would think people would be treated equally. Are they in this case? That's not for me to answer. That's for you to answer. But it certainly is. You know, I assume it's working elsewhere. I don't know the metrics of how they're doing or running their program. I'd have to look at that more to give you a better opinion. Be honest with you, because frankly, the last thing you want is somebody who's got an issue, real or imagined, and has lost their coverage or his price has gone up like crazy, and they're all over us meaning the city, for their issue. And they may be wrong, but I don't know. You know what, I wish I had a better answer than that.
Mr. Kenny?
That's a fence sitter answer.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
Thank you.
I've been coming to you long.
Finished, Mr. Kenny? Any other questions? Being none, thank you very much, Mr. McAvoy.
Thank you.
We have a third representative, again, it's Mr. Carriers, to come back from fire marquee indemnification. Welcome back, Mr. Carrier.
Good evening, Your Worship. It's a pleasure to be back. Firemark has been invoicing insurance companies now for just shy of 8 years. If a policyholder doesn't make a claim, we close the file and return it to our client, the fire department of the municipality, of the 100 municipalities that we have that we're doing this work for. As a former mayor and elected official, my job was to review the program so we weren't hurting your constituents in any way. No discount is something that we recognize that we didn't want to take away from your stakeholders. Is it going to affect rates? No, it's not really going to affect rates. The projection for the claims, when you take a look at the claims, this is part of the loss package. The coverage is in the policy. The policyholder is paying for the coverage. Chubb, under Advantage Daily Canadian Underwriter article, April 8th, just a month ago. Chubb reported pre-tax net catastrophic losses of $2.7 billion in 2017 compared to $1.1 billion in 2016. Quote, "There was no crying or hand-wringing around here. The losses were within our risk management expectations, and ensuring risk, including catastrophic risk, is the business we're in." That was the CEO of the company. I have a conflict of interest. I am telling you up front, our company makes money from only the recoveries. Insurance brokers, under the Act, an insurance broker shall, for the purpose of receiving any premium for a contract of insurance, be deemed to be the agent of the insurer, despite any conditions or stipulations to the contrary. So they too have a conflict. We both have a conflict. They have one, and I have one. No policyholder in 8 years of invoicing has paid out of pocket. The money has come from the insurance companies. There's approximately 207 insurance companies operating in Canada. The top 20 represent 84% of the marketplace. Most of these market players are operating in Canada. Some of the companies are like Citizens are easier to deal with, and some are more difficult to deal with. Some of the companies that have been bought in the last 4 years by some American companies or foreign companies are a little, I want to say, a little more Trump-noxious as they're rolling out their new format. But no policyholder from our part is being asked to pay and being reimbursed from the insurance company. Most are extremely consumer-friendly, and they're paying. We are providing the proof of loss on your behalf, an itemized invoice subject to the limits of the policy. And we have a database, as I said to you the last time I was here, of over 1,600 policy workers. We have a number of companies that have given us a vendor's number. We have a great professional, my recovery team colleagues who are licensed or retired adjusters who lead the teams have excellent professional working relationship within the insurance industry. They have a network across the country and into the United States with former colleagues in the business on the adjuster side. The selling side is different than the recovery side. You have, I have provided staff reports from a number of municipalities to your professional colleagues to review and make inquiries. Thunder Bay, Greater Sudbury, Oshawa, a number of these larger urban centers have insurance folks on staff, including adjusters, but those are the legal liabilities, or what we call the slips and falls specialist. Somebody trips on a municipal sidewalk, they sue you. So they go through that stream. Those folks have said, we would like Firemark to look after our interests on the insured peril side of the business. And yes, structure fires are one of those insured perils. We've recovered on a tornado. We've recovered on small plane crashes. We've recovered on a number of insured perils because the policyholder has paid for the coverage. And you're entitled to make and provide proof of loss under statutory condition 8 of the Insurance Act. The money is there to assist you with your budget. Is it a panacea? No. Your budget is significant, just like when I was in Collingwood. You're a similar sized municipality. It's a large environmental budget, but your revenue streams are tiny. So we're assisting significantly on the revenue side, but your taxpayers are still paying the proportionate share of the cost of running that service. What we're asking of the industry, and have been doing so for 8 years, is you're charging the premium for the coverage, so let's pay it to the fire service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Carrier? Mr. Plattman?
I'm not sure it's through Mr. Carrier or the fire chief, but Mr. Carrier, you said if no claim is made, then there wouldn't be any request to recover from the fire department. Take Mr. McAvoy. If he doesn't make a claim on his recent boo-boo he had there, then Chief, do we send him a bill anyways? We don't care whether he made a claim. We just care that you showed up and there's a cost. So I just want to get that little part cleaned up.
Through your worship to Councillor Bodner, we don't normally invoice for structure fires. We haven't up until this point in time. There has been one exception. I should say there's more than one exception, but one in particular was an arson in which a person decided to burn his house down, and we billed him for that and collected that through a sale of property. The other one is we do have within our fee schedule, we can charge for extraordinary expenses, and since it was brought up here this evening, I'll let you know that major fire we had in February, our intent is to recover some of our costs. Those costs would be for foam, as well as the companies that we use to siphon up the water runoff from the fire because it was contaminated, or we thought it would be contaminated, on orders from the Ministry of the Environment. Given what's being proposed here, in all likelihood, what we would do, we would pass that information on, including our time, and as I understand it in my conversations with Mr. Carrier, is they bill on a per truck basis plus all of our manpower costs or personnel costs, and they would submit that to the insurer. So that would either be paid up to whatever that amount was or to the total amount. If they didn't have insurance, my understanding again from Mr. Carrier is that there wouldn't be even though they might have tried to submit it, they wouldn't collect it, and we wouldn't get any money, neither would they.
We would contact if we got the file, and we would contact the regional adjuster for the company, our recovery team, and they would say, has Mr. So-and-so, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so made a claim? The answer is no, we close the file, we return it, there's no cost to you, zero. On the issue of discrimination, I have made numerous presentations to associations of municipal clerks and treasurers across this province. The Municipal Act is clear, Section 12, subsection 391 to 394. The municipality is allowed to discriminate in the application of cost recovery or fees. You do it all the time. Infants are free, toddlers are free, students get a discount, middle-aged folks pay full freight for most services, and senior citizens, as you know, get a discount. You already discriminate. This is a cost recovery mechanism because the contract insurance language is clear. The legal liability, the local ordinance, it just depends on which contract you're reading. You need to create enabling legislation to unlock the obligation within that contract. And that's the wording that I've provided to your staff. So it's a cost recovery. It is not a fee for service.
Any other questions, Mr. Vine?
Just yet.
Mrs. Kenny and Mr. Main.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Carrier. I'm just reading the report that we received tonight, and on page 16, there was a question here about what happens if the insurance company simply does not pay. And the answer was, in such cases, Fire Marquis makes a request to the Superintendent of Insurance to investigate in accordance with the Insurance Act. When an insurer charges a premium for coverage, they are obligated to pay the claim as per coverage.
So that's an issue between their regulator, the regulatory regime that the insurance people work under. So it's our my professional colleagues who are qualified in the insurance industry. If they feel that the insurance industry is acting unfair and discriminatory, then they will follow through that process with FSCO, the Financial Service Commission of Ontario.
Okay.
That does not involve you. That's
No.
a process for us.
That's right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Main?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This hasn't even got plain to me. I mean, I deferred this back in April, and I have to ask this question. As council and as the city, we do pay our fire department whether they leave the truck, whether they have a fire, the money is the same. And I think the last time I checked, we were around 13.5%. My problem would be, what about our taxpayer? If you know, and like our own chief said, that he's only had to come back, was it twice? When you had to get money back from taxes.
Your worship, through you to Councillor Main, we collected through tax sale on a property for an arson, and we've collected money back for extraordinary expenses from time to time, but limited amounts.
Okay, so that would be my point. The taxpayer already pays, regardless. The taxpayer also pays for the insurance company. My issue is, now we got a third party. And that's what I have struggled with, the third party. I might be completely wrong. And I've mulled this over. I've gone through the Windsor scenario. I've gone through I think it's Kinsville, who had a very small fire department, a small city, and I can see where there would probably be some bonus to those people. But I don't know. I just still do not feel comfortable with this.
If I could just make a comment on the Windsor Fire Chief's comment. I've only ever met the former fire chief once at an OAFC conference. I've never had a meeting with him. I've never walked him through our program. The person that did the interview in the Toronto Star never contacted us for comment. So that article did blindside us. I did contact Kingsville at the time, but that was when, I don't want to get into the details, but that was when their fire chief then had criminal charges and he had to leave the service. So I never did get a clear answer as to why that information came from Windsor when I've never met with them.
Are you finished, Mr. Main? Thank you. Done. Any other questions of Mr. Carrier? There being none, thank you, Mr. Carrier.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's a pleasure to be here again. Thank you.
I'm looking for a mover of the recommendation and a seconder. Councillor Emery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to request that a full staff report be done on this, weighing it with a recommendation as to how this should shake out for us. What possible ways that we could recoup these fees. Obviously, there's more than one, so let's see what they are and how that would work for us, and what kind of bylaw will we need to be looking at so that we can make the right decision.
So the request is for a staff report. Is there a seconder for that request?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, but I believe this is the staff report from, if I'm not correct, if we could go through you to the chief. Chief, is this
Is this everything?
Is this everything?
Through your worship to council as a whole. I had written a report originally at the request of Fire Marquee with regards to bringing this forward to council. There is a recommendation within this report. It's a case of certainly we can come back with further information if that's the request of council or the demands of council. I'm certainly going to have to do a lot more research in the sense that we now have an alternative, which I was never aware of, and
Okay.
I believe Tim even indicated he didn't know we had that available to us, which is, I find kind of interesting. It's almost like maybe we opened up another business opportunity, but the reality is I can certainly get you more information on it. I've checked with some other chiefs, those that have used it, some of the ones I've checked with. I've heard no negative comments about it from anybody. I can make comment to that within another report. As far as what would be needed, we'd need direction of council, as this says, to adjust our fee schedule accordingly. If we decide to enter into an agreement with Fire Marquee, that's pretty easy to do. And we'd have to have an agreement, bylaw passed to enter into that agreement with Fire Marquee themselves. I don't know if that answers your questions, but.
Still looking for a seconder of your request. Mr. Bonner?
On Councillor Demere's request?
Yes.
To get more
A
information.
further report.
And I think I may second that, but I agree with the chief. We've had new information come forward. And I don't believe this is time sensitive. God forbid we have a fire tomorrow and we could have went out and plundered a whole bunch of money that is free for the taking. But, you know, I would second, can you tell me what you're suggesting again?
Okay. What I'm asking for is more information and to further explore the other possibilities, because there clearly has been some more information come forward, and I think that just opens this whole issue wider. We had a more limited view of it before, and I think now there's more to look at. That's all. In order to make the right decision for everyone, I think we have to have more information, that's all.
I would second that.
Thank you. Any further questions on the issue?
Mr. Mayor, just through you through the clerk. So then we need to turn down this, right? Turn down this one recommendation that's in front of us. Is that correct? And then enter into another one, right?
No, you don't, because the first motion was never brought forward. The only
Okay,
motion that was
perfect.
brought forward was the councillors.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, no further discussion? We call for the vote. All those in favor of the recommendation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's carried. Thank you.
Okay.
Item number 2. Madam
Mm-hmm.
Demery?
That's mine.
Community bus fare increase?
There we go. Okay, thank you. Corporate Services Finance Division Report Number 2018-68, subject Port Colborne Community Bus Rate Increase.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Mr. Elliott? Discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just, I lifted this because I've had a call on it. Somebody that said they read it and they felt the report read like this increase was really only coming forward in order to keep in line with increases in Welland. And that didn't sit well with them living in Port Colborne. And when I read it, I thought, you know what? You're right, it does read that way, but there also is mention of expenses being a little higher. So I really wanted further clarification on this. So Peter, maybe you could speak to it.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demeray. Yes, this is, the main reason for the increase was actually the discussion we had at budget, where we knew that our costs were going up for the transit service. And those costs are based on higher wages, higher fuel costs, transportation costs, and so on that Welland Transit are incurring, which they pass on to us. So our costs is definitely going up, and so in relation to that, we did keep our fees a little lower than Welland's was at one time for the last year, basically, because they increased their fees June of 2017. So we've kept our fees a little bit, but because our budget, our cost has gone up, then I think it was council's decision that we should probably look at our revenues and the fee structure and bring them up. Now, we don't want to bring them up beyond Welland Transit, so it makes sense that we bring it to parity to Welland Transit, so that if people are traveling between Port Colborne and Welland and throughout the region, you're paying the same fee throughout the region.
Okay, thank you. And do you feel that this might have an impact on ridership?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I know that when Welland increased theirs, their ridership went up, or has gone up in the past, and it's when we look at, and we talked about that at our transit advisory meeting, and the thought process was that no, it wouldn't. We don't believe it's going to have a huge impact on ridership. It's going up 25 cents on the cash fare, which is what the majority of it is, and the econo passes, the 10 pass, and the monthly, it's going up a bit, but you also have the unlimited use of that. So we hope that they would use it more.
Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Peter, real quick. I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you know what the subsidy for transit is right now?
That the subsidy that the city is putting in, net of the grant that we or the provincial gas tax, is about $95,000.
Okay, and knowing that full well, then you can make a blanket statement that I believe that there is only 2 transit systems in the entire world that make a profit, and that's not even stretching it. That's nobody makes a profit. It's just a service that are provided for people. So I just wanted to know what it was before we voted on this. Thank you.
Any other questions? Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Number 5, Mr. Elliott, that was yours.
Sorry. Thank you. Planning and Development, Planning Division Report number 2018-67, subject Site Plan Control Handbook. Go?
Yes, go.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Dan. Reading the report, the one thing I was looking for was a little bit of discussion around something that quizzes me all the time and makes me think. If a person is expanding an existing facility on the industrial side, we allow them to expand up to 25% without site plan control, correct, under our bylaws right now?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Elliott, that is correct, unless there's some extenuating circumstance that does require site plan control.
Okay. So the question to me has always been, if you have a facility, and I'll use English because I don't know the metric, if you got a 100,000 square foot building and you do a 25% addition this year, your building goes to 125,000 square feet. 2 years down the road, you apply for another permit to expand another 25%. Now your building goes up another 30,000 square feet and you got 155,000 square feet now you're at 50% addition and there's still no site plan. 2 years later, you come back for another 25%, you go up to 40,000 square feet addition, now you got a 200,000 square foot building, you've basically doubled the size of your building in a few years with no site plan control. Is there a limit to the number of 25% increases on an industrial building before site plan control comes into effect?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Elliott, not under the bylaw. There's been situations, I don't want to pinpoint the actual industry, there's been expansions that have occurred over time that does not require site plan control and has not required a need for further review of those expansions having an impact that would necessitate a site plan agreement.
Okay. Is there such instances where it would?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Elliott, yes, there could be if it has an impact on drainage, for example. It may require a need for a stormwater management plan, a pond, for example, that may be one thing that would be a trigger as part of the review. Even if someone does propose an addition, it still gets reviewed by the different staff to determine, is there any anticipated impact from that expansion? And if there's a response that there's no, staff does not see any impact, then I give the authority to exempt it from site plan control.
Okay, because I know that we used to get emails that said that, you know, there's business XYZ that's gonna expand and you're exempt from site plan control because it's 25% or less of your square footage that you're gonna, and I could never understand how many of those you got or were exempt from before site plan may come into play again. So that's why I just wanted this, when I didn't see it in the report, it kind of popped up in my mind, so I just wanted to get an explanation on that. Thank you.
I think we still need a seconder for that recommendation. Mr. Maine, I think further discussion, questions? There being none, call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Item number 7, Mr. Elliott, that was yours as well.
Sorry, thank you. Community and Economic Development, Parks and Recreation Division Report number 2018-65, subject review of retail pro shop services at the Valley Health and Wellness Center.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Mrs. Mary? Discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, we get to pick on you for a change. I think this is the first time, so. Just real quick, in the report, you're talking about changing the location from the existing unit to, I'm going to take it to the unit that's beside where we are right now. Couple of questions. Is it big enough to accommodate the store? And is there going to be any negative impact on the way that it's situated right on the corner, so people may, my thought process, people may not know that it's moved and think that we don't have a pro shop, tax shop in the building anymore? That was my first question. I just have a couple of ones, real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I mentioned in the report, staff is currently undergoing the process to review utilizing the additional space, the vacated space. So at this point in time, we were looking for council's approval to go ahead with the concept. And then what will happen is we'll take a look at utilizing that space as well as how we are going to accommodate on the staff level, providing these pro shop services. So one of the options, and I allude to it in the report, is that we could potentially use the vacated premises to accommodate additional office space for staff. And as you may know, we have a staff member that is currently located within the box office area, so there potentially could be an option to move that employee into the newly vacated area and then thereby provide us with a little bit more room to accommodate space for the goods that we would be selling. The other piece about if we get council's approval on this report, one of the things that we'll be doing is making sure that there's notice at the facility to ensure that all of the users are aware. And it's right next door, so I'm actually pretty confident that it will be still visible. And also it'll provide us with an opportunity, I think, to provide more consistent hours in terms of operations and things, because we'll be able to directly tie into the programming information that we have available to us.
Okay. So are you looking, with regards to that part, Mr. Mayor, through you to Ashley again, are you looking for direction on what to do with where you want to locate it, or is that just going to be your decision after approval?
At this point in time, I'd like to dig into it a little bit more on the staff level. Certainly, if it's council's wish, I can report back on that. But at this point in time, I was hoping that that would be an administrative decision based on the best options to maximize efficiency and operations.
Okay, and one final question, Mr. Mayor, through you to Ashley. It's nice that you touched on hours, because I was going to ask about that. It's incumbent, in my perspective, from coaching and playing, that you need to have a pro shop in your arena. Like, it's not a question. It's either you need to have one. So if we're going to take it on, what's the capital cost with regards to training. Is there equipment that we need to buy, or is the skate sharpening machine left behind, or do we have to acquire one? And I guess the biggest thing for me that you touched on was the hours. You need to be there, I'll say, almost while the facility's open, at least while minor hockey is going on. If there's just ice rentals a little bit later on and things like that, I don't see a need to have it there. But we need to be open in the major times while there are games going on, up until like 9 or 10 o'clock. And I just wanted to know, through hours, training, any equipment that we need, if there's any costing been done on any of that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this point in time, staff is hopeful and quite confident that we'll be able to accommodate the additional service within our existing staff resources. So I'm not anticipating any type of financial impact there. Certainly there will be some training with regard to the operation of the skate sharpening equipment. And the acquisition of that equipment is, it's a matter of negotiation, I guess you could say, with the current tenant. And I'll leave it at that, I think. But there is potentially, if we need to go forward with purchasing some additional equipment, I can report back to council on that. And if you're looking also for some more detailed information on costing, I can, once we get more of a set plan in place, I'd be pleased to bring that information back to council.
Yeah, that's at a later date. That's good. No, I'm good. Fully supportive of moving forward with this.
Mr. Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Ashley. So I guess it's important to note here that we're not looking at, going into the sports apparel business and everything like that. This is a bare bones, just what we need. We're not necessarily competing with, a private sector business and trying to scoop some of their stuff. It's just support for the hockey players that are there. Can you confirm that, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodner, yes, that's correct. Staff view this, and as Councillor Elliott mentioned, as a value-added service for the facility users. And with that being said, we're not anticipating stocking apparel or merchandise. It would be more the key supplies and equipment that people will be using. For example, if they happen to forget something, or a piece of their equipment failed during, while they're at the arena. So I don't expect that we will have a very extensive inventory on site. It will be really a matter of us managing that and then refilling stock as the stock diminishes.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you too. I just wanted to make sure, Ashley, that we're not losing the skate sharpening lessee, right? Is this individual not wanting to do it anymore? Because you just can't train somebody to do it. Some of those skates that children wear even are like $700, $800 skates. You got to know what you're doing, or you're going to ruin those skates. So is it a lessee has decided he does not want to remain there, or it's just us looking at a different avenue maybe? The person who presently has the skate sharpening.
Ms. Gregg?
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. As outlined in the report, the lessee was aware that the term of the agreement was coming to expiry. The city has been in ongoing communication with him about that fact. He did not renew, or I should say, he did not indicate his interest in renewing the lease per se, and we told him that actually Peter, the Director of Corporate Services, had ongoing communication with the gentleman, and we had indicated to him openly that we'd be taking a look at whether we could bring the service in-house. So we've been open with him.
Any other questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. That would appear we have concluded the list. Are there any notices of motion this evening? There being none, call for a motion for adjournment. Mr. Dench, seconded by Mr. Elliott. Is adjourned. We have Council 11-18 held today, Monday, May 14th. Are there any addendum items, Madam Clerk?
No, there is not.
I entertain a motion to confirm the agenda. Moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Councillor Main. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Are there any disclosures of interest in this meeting? There being none indicated, that should be so recorded. Call for adoption of minutes. Special meeting of council 09-18 of April 16th, 2018, and a regular meeting of council 10-18, April 23rd, 2018. Motion to adopt, Councillor Bodnar, seconder, Councillor Danch. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Are there any items requiring separate discussion? There being none indicated, I call for a motion to approve those items not requiring separate discussion. Moved by Councillor Demaray, seconded by Councillor Bodnar. Call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. There are 3 proclamations. We can vote in bulk. Madam Clerk, could you read those out, please?
There's National Public Works Week. It's May 20th to 26th. Seniors Month is June 1st to the 30th. And National Health and Fitness Day as well.
Call for a motion to support those proclamations. Moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Councillor Bodnar. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Minutes of boards, commissions, and committees. We have 1 minutes of the Canal Days Advisory Committee meeting on March 27th, 2018. Call for a motion to approve those minutes. Moved by Councillor Main, seconded by Councillor Bodnar. Call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Are there any bylaws, Madam Clerk?
Yes, there's 4 bylaws. 6578-33-18 being a bylaw to set and levy the rates of taxation for the city purposes for the year 2018. 6579-34-18 being a bylaw to adopt a municipal alcohol management policy and to repeal various bylaws. 6580-35-18 being a bylaw to temporarily close sections of various streets to vehicular traffic for the purpose of the 8th Annual Port Colborne Art Crawl, and 6581-36-18 being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of council of the corporation of the city of Port Colborne at its regular meeting of May 14th, 2018.
Thank you. Call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. I entertain a motion to go into closed session. That council do not proceed into closed session in order to address the following matters. A, minutes of the closed session portion of the following council meeting, April 9th, 2018. B, Planning and Development Department Planning Division Report number 2018-61 concerning the potential disposal of city-owned land pursuant to Municipal Act 2001, Section 292C, and propose their pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Can I have a mover and seconder of that motion? Moved by Councillor Dan, seconded by Councillor Kenny. All those in favor? Against? It's carried. We can now move into a closed session, if you would, please.
It wasn't.